I know. I know that you were going strong and sticking to your boundaries. Then boom, out of nowhere, you dropped the ball and you allowed a boundary to be crossed. I know. I know how that feels. It doesn't feel good. I personally allow a boundary to be crossed recently, but in this video, I'm going to share with you exactly what you can do, what we can do that can help us when we've allowed a boundary to be crossed. Before we get into it, I need for you to give this video a thumbs up. Also, I need for you to consider subscribing to the channel after you watch the video in its entirety. I do appreciate you for being here, but we're gonna cut right there and we're gonna get straight into it. So when we think about it, the very first thing we wanna think about and the very first thing we want to ask ourselves is, why did we allow the boundary to be crossed in the first place? Ask yourself that. My personal experience just recently, when I allowed a boundary to be crossed, I thought about it, right? So the boundary I allowed to be crossed, it didn't serve as an immediate threat to me. It wasn't something that made me unhappy. It wasn't something that made me uncomfortable. It didn't make me feel bad. And honestly, it was the exact opposite. The boundary that I allowed to be crossed was something that I wanted to do. Why did I allow it to happen? And I thought about it, it's because I wanted to do it. Honestly, I got involved with someone that I know for a fact I had already put a boundary in place saying that I wasn't going to do it anymore. And because I knew what the result of that would be. And I knew why I had the boundary in place in the first place. But what did I do? I went on with it anyway. And after I allowed the boundary to be crossed, it made me sit and think about, why is it that I even allowed the boundary to be crossed in the first place? And why do so many people, maybe like yourself that's watching this video, why do we allow boundaries that we've created to be crossed in the first place? What I came to think about is that there's a constant struggle. I realized that there's a struggle, and the struggle is that some boundaries go against what we naturally want. The boundary I personally allowed to be crossed was something that I naturally wanted to do. The boundaries that naturally go against something that you want to do are the hardest boundaries to uphold. Drop a comment if you agree with that. The boundaries that naturally go against what you want to do, there's a constant battle between you deciding what you want to do and what you need to do. Sometimes we fall short, right? Because we're humans. I'll raise my hand on that one. Recently, I'll raise my hand. Sometimes the boundary that we have created, we drop the ball because ultimately what we want to do wins. And I thought about, okay, right. So I can see how that's a struggle. I can see how that's a struggle for myself. I can see how that's probably a struggle for you that's watching this. Because if you think about it, creating a boundary and upholding and communicating a boundary that either makes you feel bad, causes self-harm, makes you unhappy, affects your finances, affects your family, affects your livelihood, it's okay to say no and communicate a strong no in those instances, right? That's easy. But what can we do to help us uphold boundaries that go against what we naturally want? So you may be saying, Terry, tell me, like, give us something that we can hold on to. Give us something that gives us a little assistance that we can use, right? I'm getting there. I'm gonna tell you exactly what has helped me. What I've realized is that in the process of creating boundaries and upholding boundaries, it's important that we give ourselves grace. It's important that we give ourselves grace throughout that process. And I'll tell you what has been most helpful for me in the event that I allow a boundary to be crossed. What has helped me is taking time to reflect. Taking time to reflect on how was I feeling in that present moment. Take a time to figure out what was even going on around me and reflecting on what could I have done to alter the situation or to ultimately change the outcome. And not just reflecting, y'all. I'm gonna tell you, I just don't reflect and sit there. I talk it out. I literally, as I'm talking to the camera, I talk it out. I talk it out. The more you talk it out, the more it makes you a little stronger to uphold the boundary. That's best, right? The best thing you can do is talk it out. Now, the very opposite, the worst thing you can do, listen up. The worst thing you can do is try to sweep it under the rug and act like nothing has ever happened. Just going about your day, just whatever, just sweep it under the rug. You may be saying, okay, why is that the worst thing that can happen? That's the worst thing you can do because you are not being conscious and you're not identifying the boundary that was crossed. And two, it ultimately puts you in a cycle, in a never-ending loop of going nowhere. You may be saying, so how do you know? How do you know that if I sweep this under the rug, how do I know that it's going to put me in a never-ending cycle and getting me on the road to nowhere? I can tell you because I know firsthand. I did it, and I did it for a long time. And I'm going to tell you, it didn't feel good. I've been there. I've done that. So if I could prevent you from getting stuck in a loop and just going around and not really making any progress, I'm telling you, it's okay. If you drop the ball, if a boundary has been crossed, it's important for you to take accountability and reflect on it, have an action plan going forward. Just don't sweep it under the rug. Just don't do that. Just don't do that. All in all, though, we can say that when we create boundaries, it's with good and it's with pure intentions, right? So we have our best interests at heart. But sometimes we fall short. And we fall short because we are human. We know from this video that sometimes you do fall short, but we know going forward, there's two things we can do. We need to have a plan that can help us. And we know our plan going forward to help us in the event we allow a boundary to be crossed is that one, we're going to reflect on how we were feeling and why we even allowed the boundary to be crossed in the first place. And two, we're going to talk it out. And most importantly, we're going to give ourselves grace. We're going to give ourselves grace because we know we're human and we don't have it all figured out. This isn't a place, this isn't a channel. I'm not creating this video for us to feel like we have it all figured out because we don't have it all figured out. And that's completely okay. I made a prior video about creating boundaries and sticking to them. That was a few weeks ago. And here I am now making a follow-up video telling you what you can do and giving you advice on how you can overcome in the event you let a boundary do be crossed, because it does happen. But it's okay because we know and now we have a plan. Now, if you enjoy this video, if you said, Terry, that makes sense, you give me encouragement, you make me feel like it's okay, even though I make mistakes, we now have a plan to be better next time. And that's all that I wanted to convey in this video. We're continuously trying to get better. We're continuously trying to evolve into our best selves so we can create a life that we deserve and ultimately make us happy. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. Also, drop a comment. Let me know other strategies you use once a boundary has been crossed or that prevents you from allowing boundaries to be crossed. Drop a comment. Let me know below what your thoughts are on that. But most importantly, if you made it this far in the video, that means I like you and that means you like me. So I need you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit that subscribe button so you can join the Terry Shower Catching a Major vibe, y'all, because we're coming back with another video. Let's go.